Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark Sirota. This is the Upper Dublin School District Finance Committee meeting. Today is May 13th, 2021, and I will call the meeting to order. We have the full slate of Finance Committee members here with us tonight, and most of the rest of the board and a number of members of the administration. Mr. Leckman, are there any announcements or communications?
There are none this evening.
All right, thank you. We do have minutes from our April meeting. The members of the committee have had a chance to review those. Before I ask, I just want to take a moment to correct a statement I made last month at the finance meeting. This detail is not in the minutes, but I just figure I'd take this opportunity to make the correction. A question was asked about where our millage rate stands relative to the rest of the county. And the correct answer, I gave an answer to that question, but I was confused about the spreadsheet I was looking at. So I apologize for that. The correct answer is our millage is 7th highest of 22 in Montgomery County. That's 22, not counting Bryn Athyn School District, which is not a school district as most of us would define it. Just to clarify for everybody, this information, you don't need to ask, this information is available on PDE's website for all to see. If you would like a link, please email me or the administration, and we're happy to provide it. So with that statement, have members of the committee had a chance to review those minutes, and are you prepared to call them complete?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Great, thank you. And so those minutes will appear on the legislative agenda next week as an informational item. Let's jump right into the finance reports and recommendations. Bob, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Start off the Sandy Run update. Again, work continues to progress at a nice pace. We're in a good place still. Don't see any issues. There were some hopes to have the building completely waterproofed in at the beginning of May. That really was an aggressive dream. We could have done it if we didn't have a winter this year. So we still have some block masonry walls and some brick to put up outside, but it's not going to delay anything at all within the job. There's other areas of the building are still well ahead of where they anticipated. So work just occurs in one section of the building, not another. The roof is expected to be completed this week. Also this month, all the fireproofing should be finished. That's looking good. They're finishing up on the steel in the aux gym area of the building right now. The painting, the fireproof painting on the steel has all been completed and inspected. Some of the other work that's been going on, we had a chance to take a look at the restrooms in the classroom wing. Tile is going up in the restrooms and start to see some tile going up in the hallways on the lower level of the classrooms. Some other things that we're starting to see, the VCT flooring, the vinyl tile flooring for the classrooms should be beginning next week. We're in good shape there, so we'll start to see some floors going down. The casework, all the cabinets continue to be put in place. The hoods for the kitchen system are in. When I was walking through, the domestic water heaters are on site. A lot of the piping in the mechanical room, the new mechanical room, is in place, starting to see some expansion tanks and the pads getting ready for other equipment. So everybody's moving along really well. We're happy at the pace that everything is going. And this time next year, I think we'll be looking at a substantially completed building.
Fantastic, thank you. And Bob, Andy, anything to call our attention to in the budget document?
No material changes. Everything's still trending right where we expect it to be.
Okay, great. Any comments or questions from the committee or the board? I will, before we go, Stan, let me just announce the board did actually have a chance to tour the building. We finished a few minutes ago, it seems like, less than an hour ago. And so most of the board was there. Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't seem to raise my hand, but I just want to make sure the floors, new floors that are being installed, that they're protected. And whose responsibility is that to protect the floors? Are we purchasing the material, or is the the construction manager purchasing the material, then putting it down? That was just my one question.
Yes, the construction manager, or actually the general contractor, Skepton, owns that material until we accept the building. So they will be taking care of protecting the floors as they go down. When we do our final inspections, our final punch list, if any floor is scratched, finish is damaged in any way, or anything had happened, we just don't like the way something was installed, that will be punch listed and they'll be required to take care of it. So if they're putting it down now, it is their responsibility to maintain it until the building is officially turned over to us next year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you both for that update. Let's move on to their purchase of an express cargo van.
Yes, we have a fleet of 4 vans for our maintenance personnel. 2 of our vans are 2005. The other 2 are 2008. They really should be on a 15-year rotation to replace. We're off that schedule a little bit and hope to get back on it. So if we do 1 van over the next 4 years, we'll have all of our vans up to place. So we're looking at replacing our plumber's van, which is a 2005 Chevy. It has 100,000 miles on it. It's starting to get in poor condition. We had it up on a lift this year. There's a lot of rust that needs to be taken care of. Some of the body panels are in poor shape. So we're looking to replace that with a Chevy Express van, be a 2021, and we would purchase that off of CoStars. Right now, it's difficult to get any vans. We normally deal with Faulkner Chevrolet. They've been our CoStars dealer for many years. When I spoke with them, they do not have any vans, and at this point, they're not even allowed to order any because of the backups at the factory. Went looking around at other CoStars dealers, and one I dealt with before was Andrew Chevrolet in Mannheim. They had 2 vans on the lot. I found out they were sold. They came back to us and said they have 1 more that's sitting at the factory that is not sold yet, and it's just waiting for computer chips to be installed. As soon as the computer chips are installed, it'll be shipped out. So they gave us a price with the CoStars pricing, and they also sell their vans already fitted out for shelving and bulkheads. So if it's being used as a work van, it's going to roll in the door complete for us. The CoStars price with the upfit of the shelving is $30,995.
All right, any comments or questions? All right, I'm all for getting back on that replacement cycle. So members of the committee, we will advance this one to the legislative meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to
Can I-
accepting, I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead, Darlene.
Yeah,
I did not
just
see it.
a quick question. What is the advantage to having the CoStars pricing?
CoStar's pricing, it's more, and you can chime in also if you want. It's under a state contract. We don't have to go, we avoid the bidding process. It's more, we can negotiate, the CoStar's contract. They do have an amount that they discount off for the contract, but the nice part is it remains negotiable.
Yeah, the only thing we have purchasing rules that we must follow when we do purchasing, right? We can go out to bid, or we can go out to bid over certain thresholds, $21,000 being about the round number, or we can purchase off of state contracts. I think right now the prudent thing to do is to purchase off of a CoStars contract. They're already bid, and vehicles are very, very tough to come by right now. So I do think this is a prudent purchase, and it's an allowable purchase under state guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and just to clarify that, Bob said we avoid the bidding process, and we do avoid the internal bidding process, but it is still a bid item. It's just bid by CoStars, not individually by us. Titia, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. The chip that is not installed, is that in-house with the vendor, or are they waiting for the chip to arrive, and that could be a while?
No, this is an industry-wide issue. A lot of it is coming back to the problem that occurred at the Suez Canal, that computer chips right now are just not available. The factories have completed vehicles, but they don't have the CPUs in the vehicles ready to go because there's just a shortage on chips right now. So the vehicle's assembled and complete. It just needs the computer to send it out the door.
Thanks.
Again, Mark, I can't raise my hand. However, Bob, when did they say they're going to be able to deliver this van?
They didn't have an answer. They're waiting for the factory. They check back every day. I would assume it would be next few weeks that they would get this, as long as they would start receiving the computer chips.
I know I'm squeezing another 6 months out of my truck because I ordered my truck back in early March, and they're saying it's not going to be available till September. Can we still put Band-Aids on this van that we can get working until we do get this this new van comes in?
Yes, absolutely. Our mechanics at the bus garage did a nice job. They did that for us this year. They kept it going. They worked on the truck, gave it what it needed to pass inspections. It's safe, it's roadworthy, but we know we're not going to get too many more years out of it.
Great, thank you.
All right, just to clarify, since we had continued discussions, members of the committee, we're still moving this one forward?
Yes.
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 All right, thank you. So let's move on to accepting a donation from the Fort Washington PTO for an outdoor classroom.
Hope if I am muted. Yes, the Fort Washington PTO approached me. They are looking to donate an outdoor classroom very similar to what was done at Jarretttown, with some landscaping, some tables, a little platform that they can use either for a little outdoor performance or a classroom setting, just many uses from this. Their budget is $25,000, and they are looking to work with Perry Landscaping. There is an actual rendering from Perry Landscaping in here, and building a little pavilion on there. They do have a price from Back to Nature decks, but that's all going to be negotiated. And because of prices of materials that are rising, they're looking to remain within their budget, and they may need to make some changes in order to do that. But this is something they're looking to have done and donate to the school district. I guess I should tell you about the area that we're looking at also.
Yeah, I was going to ask where we're talking about putting it.
Yes. So at Fort Washington, we came down, we looked at different areas. We think the best area right now is going to be where the old baseball field was. That's been in poor condition. The backstop, it's not used as a baseball field anymore. That would be a good location to help renovate that area. It would really help out with the playground, take care of some of our, that's always a soppy area, some of the drainage. So with the landscape improvements, with some of the puddling where the bases used to be, that seems to be the best place that we had found.
Okay, and I trust you're fully in the loop in terms of making sure this is maintainable and all that kind of thing.
Yes, they're very good to work with. We met on site with Perry Landscaping. We use Perry for some of our projects around the district now, purchase materials. We did talk about that and make sure they were putting in materials that are it's not going to affect impervious coverage. So, make sure that we can maintain all the water draining through what they are using, all the materials. So, what type of plants we select, they're going to work with all that. And they have a garden club who help us to maintain them through the PTO.
Stan.
Hey, Bob, do they have to get any, does the township have to approve any of these plans? I'm looking at that pavilion. Does it need to be, does the stormwater need to be managed on site? Does it have to, again, need to be approved by the township, the design? I'm looking at that, that application. Gosh, you can barely read what it says there on Back to Nature decks. the specs of it. I'm looking at it, you know, the design that Perry submitted. I mean, it says 1/8 inch to equals a foot. I mean, I can't tell the dimensions of that. Is it 20 foot by 50 feet? There's no, I mean, there's no figures on there. I mean, how can we look at this and say, yeah, this looks like it's a structurally sound building where there's no dimensions, there's no design plan whatsoever?
Yes, there is framing dimensions, 16 by 20. At the deck, I think that's going to get a little smaller. We have the Perry landscaping. We are going to consult with the township, make sure we're in compliance with everything. Perry has also offered their assistance to work with us and help go to the township, since they do this every day with when they're installing gardens within the township, and they have that relationship. So they are going to work with us. We will be running this past the township to make sure everything is approved. With the decking area, we'll do those calculations, look at what coverage, but I'm not expecting that we're going to have to do any, because of the size of the property, that we would have to do anything to capture rainwater. Again, we're looking to make sure that all the materials that are being used, that it's going to be pervious, that we're not going to have the coverage area issues. I think overall it would be an improvement to that section of the property.
Is that brick pavers and picnic tables? I mean,
there's a few pavers. The blue section is a few pavers. Everything else is the colored stones. How we have in the courtyard at the high school, you have the different stones. You'll have mulching around the flower beds.
Are they stones that the kids could throw at each other, or what?
No.
What do you mean?
No.
What
No,
kind of
we
stone?
wouldn't put that type of stone. Very small gravel type. The pavers, they were looking, they could actually be personalized. They were looking at doing that if families want to donate a paver, but that's a very small portion of the area. But there will be tables there or some benches in place.
And when would this thing be, this outside classroom be installed?
They're actually looking, once we get all the authorizations that we need to do something within 3 to 4 weeks. They're looking to have as part of the for the current fifth graders, class of 2021, part of their gift back to the school. This would be included in that.
Dr. Yanni, have you heard any comments from teachers, staff, kids about the outside classroom at Geraldtown?
I know it's used pretty frequently in the nice weather. I know that teachers appreciate using it. I think kids enjoy being out there. I don't know that there's anything been specifically said about the outdoor classroom itself, but I know it's used a fair amount.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff.
Thanks, Mark. Bob, I'm assuming that the school district will be the one that actually contracts for this work. Is that correct? And if so, will there be a formal construction contract or something like with terms and conditions over and above the proposal from Back to Nature decks, or how's that all going to work?
The PTO is working directly with these groups. They were looking to have this work done and donate it back to the school district, such as we just did with UDJA with the baseball fields, where they had donated the new they constructed the new backstops and donated them back to the school district.
So the ultimate contracting relationship here will be between the Fort Washington PTA and the contractor, whether it's Back to Nature decks or whoever else. Yes,
and we will have input on anything that they do. This wouldn't be anything that would be done blindly. We would have input through the whole process.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks much.
Jen.
Yeah, Bob. So if I recall, last year there was a sinkhole not too far from this area. So we're confident that those problems are not going to spread over to this area.
Yes, that was one of the considerations looking at the area. Any future parking that we would need. I wanted to avoid the drop-off area. We have a It's really not an official parking spot, but everybody does it. Where the old house used to be on the property behind Fort Washington, how their driveway went down. Parents use that now for additional parking. You come in off Fort Washington, that grass area. So we want to avoid that area. This is closer to the retaining wall where the current baseball field is. The smaller one, it just has not been used, is overgrown. That's the area we're looking at. And that's well away from where the sinkhole problem was. The sinkhole problem was related to a storm sewer for the drainage that came from Fort Washington Avenue. There was an easement through our property with PennDOT that went out to local streams for the rainwater that came down that road. This is nowhere near there. Those issues with the piping for now have been corrected. The township actually has responsibility from PennDOT. The way the easement reads, the township maintains that piping. So the township worked with us to make the repairs on the sinkhole. So we don't expect that to interfere at all with this area.
Thank you.
Mike.
I think this is a great opportunity, and I really thank the Fort Washington PTO for this. But from a fiduciary standpoint, if the construction and renovation essentially overruns, will the school district be responsible for picking up the additional funds needed to cover the completion? That's the first question. The second, which again, I don't see that as a big deal. You know, if we were to overrun 10%, it's $2,500. But just from a accountability standpoint, if that's the case, then I'd like to make sure that the board understands that, so we know what we're voting for next week. And then secondly, in your opinion, given the plans that are in place right now, is $25K enough to cover or cover what's planned, what we're looking at right now on the screen? Or should we maybe scale back just a little bit so we have a little reserve in place just in case?
So I'll jump in quick on the money. I think because this project exceeds the bidding threshold, that I'm not sure the district could participate in the funding of this project. If this is a donation from the PTO, it would have to be fully funded by the PTO, in my opinion. So Bob, you can certainly take the other piece of that, but I think this project is being driven by the PTO. So I think ultimately it would be, Bob would have to have some more meetings with them to talk about scaling it back if that was necessary.
Yes, I actually just received a message from the PTA that they would fully fund this project. Okay. I know they have a budget that they're working with, and they have options.
Okay.
They could scale down the size of that pavilion area. Landscaping, some of that could change, because a lot of it's just the building materials right now.
Yeah.
So they are flexible, but they are saying that they will fully fund this.
Like I said, I'm not, by no means am I quibbling on it. I was just wanted to know if there was something that if we needed to cover, then it would be on the table and everybody would be aware, so there wouldn't be any questions downstream. So thank you.
Titia.
Yeah, I love the idea of an outdoor space for teaching and learning. I think it's great. I have a little bit of a concern about the timing, in that, well, if it sounds like the work will be carried out during the school day or during the school year. And if that's the case, do people working on the project have to have the same kind of clearances that our contractors have on projects that are going on in the district? I'm wondering if this is something that should be done after school's out, which will allow perhaps a little bit more materials and trucks and what you need to be accessing the site a little easier.
Yes, the PTA, they would like to have had this done for the end of the year, have fifth graders cut the ribbon to opening, but that is not necessary for them. we do check clearances. Even during the summer, we check clearances on the contractors, just in case there's any programs going on in the school. Perry Landscaping, is local. They do work for us. They are a Fort Washington elementary family. So, we do work with them. And the other back to nature decks, we would require the same background information from them. Any work that we would conduct, we wouldn't do it with students around. It would all be coordinated.
Great, thanks so much.
Arlene,
I just want to get some clarification on what we're voting on. Obviously, this is going to be a donation, but it's not completed. So it's obviously not a donation yet. So what is the motion that we're actually going to be voting on, that we're giving permission for them to proceed, with this project to donate back to the school? Exactly what is it? Since we financially can't be involved with it, I just want to make sure we're clear on the motion.
Yeah, I would think, I understand it's not done yet, but the PTA is making a donation. They're asking for permission to do this work to donate to the school district. So I think we're accepting the donation, even though it's not completed. That would give them the authorization to do this work.
Right, so are we?
We could break it apart and authorize them to do this work and then subsequently accept the donation as well, I suppose.
I'm not concerned about which way we go. I just want to be clear on how we're proceeding with accepting a donation.
When I was approached by the PTA, it was a preliminary, would this be something that the school district would be willing to allow us to do? So this is a permission to move forward with this.
Great, thank you.
I see there's two other hands, but before I move to those, since I haven't spoken yet, first of all, I love the idea of outdoor classrooms. I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and certainly thank the PTA for pushing this forward. I do have some questions. One is I'm not clear, what direction is this going to be facing? I understand where on the site it's going, but I don't really have a clear picture of what it will look like when it's done.
So the pavilion portion will be backing up against the parking lot retaining wall, and the picnic area, the gravel, will be protruding out towards the Field of Dreams direction. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the lower playground. So it'll be adjacent to the lower playground that is already at Fort Washington.
All right, and the idea is that the classroom portion, the place where the students would sit, is outdoors or it's undercover?
No, it's outdoors. The area in the red with the blue and brown picnic tables, that's the area the students could sit.
So the purpose for the pavilion is, I'm picturing a pavilion kind of similar but smaller than the one at, for instance, at Montauk. Is that what I should be picturing?
Yes, it much smaller than that.
Yeah.
It's really, and I think until they get their plans accomplished, what their budget will be, it may just be a deck, as Jarretttown is really just a deck with some trim around it to make it look nicer, a pergola type roof, really not to keep elements out. And this may be the same thing. I think that'll be what their decision is. But it's more of a place where somebody could stand up and face the group if they're talking to the group. If the students are doing a little performance or a play outside, it would be somewhere the official area to conduct that.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. So my only concern about accepting this is I just want to make absolutely sure that in the contract, there is language that stipulates that we, and by we, I really mean you, Bob, and Andy and Steve, have have basically veto power on the design, because we have to own it and maintain it and keep it going forward. That's one concern. And then the other concern, to Mike's point, is if we're accepting this before it's built, and it gets partially built for whatever reason, then I would hope that there's language in there that, either it is completed or returned to some form of a finished state when the donation is complete, rather than, half-baked, wash our hands of it, we're done. I don't think either of those things would happen. It just seems wise to have that kind of language in there. Because clearly it's not a finished design yet at this point. And so it's difficult for us, I think, to just say yes. So I just want to make sure we have those controls in place. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, just it kind of follows up on that a little bit, Bob, and my contract question. I guess just some things that I think we should be thinking about, assuming this is approved to go forward, is like additional insured status. I mean, if in this situation, we would normally require a contractor to make the district an additional insured, we should think about whether that's part of the deal. And the other thing that comes to mind is warranty, that if there's a warranty flowing either on the work or on the materials or on the roof, we may need to think about who that warranty goes to originally. And if it goes to the Fort Washington PTO, we may need to have something with them to assign it to the district. I mean, neither of which is like an insurmountable problem. It was more just comments of things that we probably need to think about if or as this moves forward. So I just want to make those comments.
Stan, is your hand still up, or?
I'm looking at the location. I'm obviously there's no shade for the kids who would be sitting or standing in the classroom area. Could be concerns about sunburn, sun poison. My other concern is, does the access to this outside classroom, does that need to be handicapped accessible, and does that need to be improved to accept wheelchairs, railings? Could we be opening up a mountain here with concerns about safety? I don't know. The directors had a lot of concerns and some great questions about this project.
Bob, where is the access, and is it fully accessible from the building?
No, there is not an accessible path to this, but I'm trying to think, we really don't have an accessible path to our other playground down there either. So it'll all be something to take into account in the future for any work that we are doing down there.
Are we confident that this is not a large enough project to trigger the requirements of ADA to make that area accessible?
That would have to be something we would have to follow up on. The ADA laws are tricky. I just want to make sure, if that would be one thing we would be asking to put in seating that meets the requirements. But pathway would be something that we would have to look at.
Right. And as part of, in the coming months, as we're talking about the facility condition assessment work, we need to make sure that all of our spaces are ADA accessible. So that we would have to make sure that this space, with it being new, would be accessible. So that does need to be baked into the plan.
Jen.
I do think this is an exciting idea. When you go back to talk to them, Bob, I'm wondering if they have deadlines where do they have to spend the money? So they're actually a PTA. So they have to follow the PTA nonprofit guidelines. So that's just a question I think that you should ask them what their deadlines are. Unless you already know.
No, I do not know that. That is something I will have to go back and ask them.
All right, so it sounds to me like we had a lot of questions and thoughts about this. I don't think in its current state we're ready to just simply approve. I think what I heard from the committee and the rest of the board is that we're certainly excited by the idea. Very much thank the PTA for this offer. I think we need to see a more fully baked design plan, finance documents, legal documents, ADA accessibility, et cetera, before we're ready to say yes. If that's ready by Monday, I think we can go ahead and have another discussion about it on Monday. If not, I'm hoping it can be brought back to the next Finance Committee meeting. Does anyone on the Finance Committee disagree with that take?
I think it should be tabled until the next finance meeting. There's too many questions. I doubt that we're going to get answers to address our concerns of the design, not to mention accessibility. And if we do have to improve it to be able to be handicap accessible, how much would that cost the district to make those necessary improvements? And how long is that? Is it 100 feet long that we have to put in a path with a railing? There's a lot of unanswered questions here. I doubt that they're going to get these answers to all of our concerns by Monday.
Darlene.
I know we do have a lot of questions, but I would like to give them an opportunity to try to find out the answers to our questions. It may be that they already have some of those answers. So I would support what Mr. Sirota mentioned, that we give them an opportunity. And if they're able to do that, that they can then bring it back on Monday, that we can allow them to move forward. Again, they may have answers to many of our questions. We just don't have those answers right now. But I would like to give them an opportunity, and if they can provide them, then I think we should move forward.
Mike.
Yeah, I concur. I also concur with your suggestion, and Dr. Davis. I'm hopeful. I think this is a great opportunity. I'm hopeful that we can have our questions resolved and move forward with the project as soon as possible. So I'll keep my fingers crossed that we'll have everything lined up by Monday.
All right, so let's go ahead and hold a place on the agenda for Monday. Bob, as you continue your communications with them, you can keep us apprised about whether we'll be ready or not.
Yes, I'll have those conversations with them tomorrow morning. Hopefully I can have an answer to report back to you for tomorrow afternoon.
Great. All right, thank you. Andy, let's move on to monthly financial reports.
Yes, thank you. So Brooke, if you can open up the treasurer's report. I do have just a couple things that I want to point out here in some of these reports. So on page 1 of the treasurer's report, I do want to note interim real estate taxes. You can actually see that we're about $500,000 over budget to the good side on the revenue, primarily related to assessments from new developments, the Enclave and the Promenade there. So you can see interim real estate taxes, the 6112. Current month, we received over $360,000 in interim taxes from those two areas. And in June, what I'll be looking to do is bring a recommendation to actually increase our committed fund balance for assessment appeals to closer to 1.5 million with some of these one-time funds that we're receiving. But again, I'll provide much more information about that next month. I think as we have some of these newer, larger developments coming online, especially the Promenade, which will eventually be our largest taxpayer when that development is completed. There's certainly increased risk there of appeals coming in from that, which will be almost a $70 million assessed value property. Other local revenue, this is currently trending lower than prior year. You see in the 6,000 item there, other local revenues. It's primarily from facility usage being down year over year. But I want to note that item just because within there, which you wouldn't see by itself, we received this month in April a major rebate from our workers' compensation vendor or consortium that we participate in called SDIC. SDIC financials have been trending extremely positively, and they've exceeded its fund balance target. So the board, which is actually a board that I sit on, approved a plan to return $9 million to member school districts, and our share of that was $191,000. Which was a major win. So that consortium has been really working out really well for us. On page 5 is the food service financials. Again, won't walk through all of that, but just to note that food service department led by Kristen Daly is still doing an outstanding job this year, where other school districts are continuing to lose money this year and struggle. Kristen has increased her fund balance by almost $200,000 this year. So again, that's important, knowing that Kristen, the food service department, operates very much like a business, so they need to be self-sustaining. And Kristen also has needs in some of her kitchens, like we're looking at needs across the district in our facilities. So a lot of that money will be spent for her to start to do some upgrades, and the board will hear about that. And one example of that, which will come up very quickly, is at Jarretttown Elementary. If you're familiar with that building outside, there's an external freezer outside of the building, and that whole pad is just coming up, and the freezer itself is not working anymore. So when we do the work this summer to pave that area, we'll look to replace that, and that money, Kristen will be able to pay for that out of the food service department. In the other financial reports package, Brooke, so if you can open other financial reports, please. Page 2 on that, I do note there additional assessments from new developments. So we have 5 additional that were assessed in the enclave. So right now there's 31 units assessed out of 115 in the enclave. And we saw another significant assessment for the promenade hit. So right now we believe, again, that the end of the project and what promenade will be valued at is still a bit speculative, as we don't know until all the assessments come in, but we believe about 30% of the assessed value has been realized to date. Brooke, if you could scroll down to page 2, please, that would be great. So there you can see the assessments. Scroll down a little more there, Brooke. Yeah, you can see the assessments at the bottom of page 2 that I'm referring to. So you can see a 1.28 million in enclave, and another almost 5.7 million in assessed value hit from the promenade there. On page 4, EIT is up in April again compared to 2020. But if you remember, April 2020 was sort of the very beginning of the impacts of COVID. So while you can see there in April, that yellow bar is up significantly over April, it's very much in line with the prior 2 years. So EIT continues to trend strong there. And then page 5, transfer tax revenue was higher than prior years based on the continued strength of the residential housing market. And again, what you can see there, I note, is that we've only seen one commercial property or one substantial commercial property actually transact this year, which is a bit unusual. So we'll continue to watch that. And then lastly, in the revenue and expense projections, which is the last report there, Brooke, 2021. The other report in the other attachment, Brooke, 2021 revenue and expense projections. There's been no material changes from what was presented last month. We're still projecting a surplus of around $6.2 million this year. Again, I won't walk through all the details, but the highlights are 3.5 million in additional revenue over what we budgeted. Again, primarily because we took some significant budget decreases in local revenue as we were expecting negative economic impacts from COVID, which did not materialize. So again, the 21-22 budget does kind of bring that all back in line. And we're projecting 6.5 billion under the expenditure budget, which are primarily due to one-time impacts of COVID. And the notes on this page provide all of the details around that. So if you want to learn more about that, certainly check out the notes. I think that covers everything on the agenda, or everything on that item I wanted to cover. So I'll certainly answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks. I have one, while other board members may have more. On the promenade, do we know what triggers new assessments over there? When do those happen? Or do they happen on some kind of schedule that we can predict, or it just happens when it happens?
Yeah, it's totally unpredictable. That's the question that I continue to work with our solicitor when we talk about assessments and assessment appeals. That's just based on when Montgomery County comes out and does their assessment on it. It's no schedule, and we have no insight into that schedule whatsoever.
That's unfortunate, but understandable. All right. Anyone else?
It sounds like it's done every quarter, I think, but in terms of when they can get out. It's probably not going to be more than every quarter. I think that's when it's occurring.
Even if we could predict that it's every quarter, I'd be happy just to have some kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. We can follow up with our tax collector and Montgomery County, I guess, to ask.
Yeah. I've specifically asked that question of our solicitor, Mimi Chotsky, who we work with at Whistler, and she has said, while it could happen on a regular basis, there is no set timeline,
Right.
Which is why I keep her in the loop in case we feel like we're not getting assessments on a regular enough basis. That's when she would get involved and go say, hey, we're interested, and we can push that a little bit if we feel like it's not happening regular enough.
Art, did you have something else?
Yeah. Andy, you quickly mentioned the potential of increasing the in our balance sheet the assessment appeals payable. I just want to put in that I really strongly support that, and not just to build up that additional money in there, and also I believe when they look at our bond ratings too, when they give us a rating, they look at our balance sheets and our revenues, and I think that would also help us, in the long run. And fortunately, we have not needed to use that, but these are difficult times, and you don't know what's going to happen with all the commercial real estate that's out there, and if everybody's going to be going back to work, or there's going to be a dip in commercial real estate, and it could come back there really hurt the district.
So you're talking about the committed fund balance of 960,000.
Yep, 279, right.
And are you suggesting that we should consider doing that in the current fiscal year, or you're suggesting budgeting a transfer or a commitment?
Well, I
for
would
next
go with the
fiscal year?
recommendation of Mr. Leckman,
Okay.
because he did mention that he was considering some additional funds in that, an additional transfer.
Yeah, we can. So the commitment really is just a board action, right? We're not actually moving money anywhere, so that can happen up until December of next year, basically when we finish our audit. But we can do it anytime between now and then.
We don't need a motion to give us.
We do need we do need a motion, but it's not like a movement of funds from the general fund to the capital reserve fund, as an example. It's just a designation, and yes, absolutely, the board does need to make a motion to do that when we get there.
This would be a good year to do that, Andy, I think.
I'm certainly comfortable with considering that, but I do want to remind the committee and the board that that commitment would take away from our unassigned fund balance, which and we do have a target of getting that up to 5% of our budget, and it's not quite there yet.
But again, it gives us the time. We don't have to do anything until December to see where things finally end up. I mean, I know we budget very conservatively, and that's the right way to budget. And hopefully we'll have some additional funds that Andy can recommend that we move into that account.
Sure. Yeah, I'm certainly, I guess we'll consider that once the audited financials are complete, which is roughly November, December timeframe. Anyone else? All right, so members of the committee, we will move those monthly financial reports over to the legislative meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have budget transfers.
Yep, there are just a few proposed budget transfers to cover all individual accounts that are trending toward negative balances. Again, these are individual accounts that we're looking at. Overall, the budget is trending very positively. So none of them have a negative impact on our current year financials or our projections. They're just it's an accounting PDE requirement just to keep all of our accounts on the positive side. So nothing really to note. The big one there, the first one, is just to continue to cover the impact of our cyber charter tuition payments that we have going out. So, as that kind of trends and gets towards negative, we fill that in. So there may be one more that's needed there, but overall everything's trending positively, and I'm not concerned about any of these transfers.
Comments or questions? All right, so members will move that one forward.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you. Next up, we have a proposed transfer to capital reserve.
Yes, thank you. So tonight I want to begin the discussion about a recommended transfer to our capital reserve fund. And I say begin because I recommend that the transfer be completed prior to June 30th to be reported in the current year. And I would like one more month to see actual results coming in, one more month of actual results before finalizing that recommendation. So tonight, I just want to have a discussion to make sure everyone's understanding of what the recommendation is, and then a formal request will be made next month. So first, just a reminder about what the Capital Reserve Fund is and how how it functions. So Capital Reserve Fund is a one-way transfer of funds from the general fund to the Capital Reserve Fund. And once funds are transferred to the Capital Reserve Fund, they cannot be transferred out to any other funds. Funds can be transferred based on unused appropriations during the current year or surplus funds remaining at the end of the year, which we are projecting to have this year. The fund is used to fund capital expenditures. So capital expenditures include facility capital improvements. So think all the things that are on our facility condition assessment, replacement or additions to facilities. We can purchase, and we do purchase and replace school buses with those funds from the reserve fund. And you can also, and this is where it's very important, construction of new buildings and the debt service associated with the construction of those new buildings can be paid from the reserve fund. So while it's it can be a little unnerving to say it's a one-way trip for these funds to go to the Capital Reserve Fund. In the event that we ever needed access to those funds, which I would hope we never need to recommend for the general fund, we can make debt service payments from the Capital Reserve Fund if we ever needed to do that. So there is a little bit of flexibility there. At the current time, my recommendation based on the attachment that's in that agenda item, so Brooke, you can feel free to open that up. At the current time, my recommendation is to make a transfer of $5 million to the Capital Reserve Fund based on the current year financial projections that we've been reviewing for the last 3 months. So this is the beginning of the development of the funding for our facility condition assessment and the projected $40 million that we'll need to fund capital projects over the next 10 years. The fund currently has a balance of about $5.5 million. So by adding another $5 million, the estimated projects could already be about 25% funded, which I think is a great thing. Again, I'd like to bring the final recommendation in June. Again, that gives us another month just to see everything that happens before we finalize that number. But I would like to make a transfer before June 30th. Based on the projections that we are seeing. So what questions can I answer about this recommendation.
Mike?
Is there a requirement, is there a minimum that we have to fulfill when we do a fund transfer of this nature? Is 5 million the minimum, or do we have some flexibility there?
No, there's no minimum or maximum. I would just say, I would say there's no minimum. The maximum would be up to, we can't transfer more than we would have available, to transferring cash as an example. So, but there's no minimum.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just a clarification. Andy, you said construction of new buildings. Does that also mean renovation? Or does it have to be new?
Yep, no, it can be replacement or additions to current buildings. So yes, renovations would absolutely fit into what a capital reserve could be used for.
Yeah.
And
no,
major
I think-
components, boilers, roofs, those kinds of things also qualify as capital.
Yep.
All right, yeah, no, and I think this is a very good approach and sets us up for future projects. So sounds like a good plan.
Art?
Andy, can you discuss the difference between capital reserve fund and the debt service fund?
Yeah, the capital reserve fund is really more aimed at doing actual work, projects, new buildings, capital projects. So it's aimed at that. You are able to pay debt service out of that fund if you need to, but again, it's really more aimed at doing work and paying for work. The debt service fund, which we also have around $4 million in, debt service fund is really where you save money to, if you wanted to pay off debt early or something to that effect. So, we would save money over there if we ever wanted to. We have an issue that's getting to the end and we just want to say, hey, let's pay off the, $3 million and be done with that one. We could pay it out of that fund.
Again, you have greater flexibility with the debt service fund in terms of transferring it out, I believe.
I don't know the answer to that, if you can transfer out of the debt service fund.
Okay. And again,
I don't know for certain, but that is my recollection when we established the debt service fund. But
Yeah.
I don't have.
But you cannot pay for capital projects out of the debt service fund.
correct. Right. Got it. Okay. And Andy, one last question. I noticed in the treasurer's reports today that both capital reserve and debt service is currently sitting in cash. Is that because you're in the process of or doing some investments with Pliget or Plislav?
Investment opportunities are extremely limited right now. We're already limited in what type of investments we can have, CDs, treasury bills, things like that. Access to that is very tough right now, and rates are near all-time lows. So yes, we continue to talk with Plislav about what our opportunities are. They've recently, the Capital Reserve Fund recently, I think it was the end of February, what we had invested in matured, and there just hasn't been really an opportunity to set that money up in anything else.
Darlene?
Yeah, some of my questions have already been answered, so I'd just like to make a comment. I do think that it is important for us to move some of this money over to our fund balance. I think that from the time that we received our facilities plan, we knew that we were going to need to really start focusing in on that to do some of the much needed work that is scattered throughout our district. So I want to just thank you, Mr. Leckman, for kind of taking a look at the bigger picture and not just looking at what we need to do today, but what we need to do in the future. And I definitely support your recommendation.
Andy, can you, what is it you're looking for over the next month that may change your recommendation from 5 million to some other number?
Not looking for anything specifically, just there's no, in my opinion, there's no rush to do it this month. So why not let an extra month of actual information come at us just so we have that to see before we make the final call.
Okay, thanks. So again, just following up to the last item, a reminder for the board that, you know, it's fantastic that we have this opportunity to more fully fund the capital projects fund. So that's really good news. We do have a balance of things to try to take care of, including getting our fund balance back up to 5% and keeping tax increases to a comfortable level, in addition to funding those projects. So there is a balance to be struck with this opportunity. So Andy, I look forward to seeing the recommendation next month. So I think there's no action for us to take on this item. Let's move on. The proposed final budget.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sirota. And I think, you know, I'll start this out just by saying, yeah, Brooke, I'm gonna grab the screen share here. So I'll start out by saying that some of those questions about fund balance, and I think they're very valid questions. That's I will bring absolutely more information, I think, in the final budget presentation that I bring to the Finance Committee in June to look at, based on our projections, where our fund balance numbers will look at. And I think what you'll see, or what my projections are starting to show, is that when you think about how our budget's set up this year, we had a large deficit because of proposed lost revenue from COVID that's really not materialized. Not only are we filling that in, but then we have the surplus on top of it. So I think what you'll see is, you know, some of that fund balance will come back in line to be in line with our policy. And then, you know, these extra things will not hurt that. So that I will bring that back with my final budget proposal next month. But tonight, what I want to provide you is with an update on the proposed final budget and talk about some of the changes from the last 2 months that have happened, that have been put in place. So if you remember, March, we had a detailed review of revenues. April, we had a detailed review of expenditures. And then May, we had a budget town hall that provided lots of information on both of those topics. And tonight I'll focus just on the changes and certainly answer any questions. So this is just a review of our timeline. I won't walk through this, but again, where we're at is tonight, we would look at the proposed final. On Monday night, what the board would be asked to do is basically approve the proposed final to make it available for public inspection. And then we would advertise that and put notices out so all of our township residents are aware of that. So changes at the very highest level, what you see in this table is the changes that exist from tonight, what I'm talking about, the proposed final, to what I'm calling the prior version, what we reviewed over the March and April timeframes. And you can see that revenue projections right now are $107,932,306, which is an increase of about a little over $219,000 since we last reviewed this. That projection currently still includes the 3% property tax increase placeholder, which we'll certainly discuss on the slide tonight. Expenditures, you can see, are $106,518,122, which is a decrease of almost $458,000, and the transfer to capital reserve remains at $1.9 million. That leaves us with an ending fund balance of $4,124,898. Again, I note that that's based on budget to budget. That doesn't contemplate the year-end projections for 2021, which is something that I'll show you next month, which I talked about a little bit. So highlighting the changes, just hitting all of the big areas that have changed. Revenue, you can see, increased by about $219,000, which is primarily due to increases in the assessed values from new developments since the March revenue presentation. And this is mostly due to new assessments, which we discussed earlier from Promenade and Enclave. Expenditures decreased by about $458,000 as a result of changes in the areas that you see here. So we talked about our benefits consortium and the final rate, which came in, it was at 6% and it was reduced to 4.2%. I do note there that within there is dental and vision. So when last I talked about for every 1% in medical and prescription, it was about a $75,000 adjustment. Also included in that number is dental and vision. So everything reduced, we're about $200,000 lower. Workers' compensation was reduced to match our final rates. So as I noted earlier, our consortium is doing extremely well financially. So all of the discounts that existed in the past couple of years, we were able to, the SDIC board was able to approve to retain those discounts in the next year. So with those discounts, we were able to pull $84,000 out of our workers' compensation budget now that those were approved. Charter school, we have already received 10 enrollments back in the district. Some are already back this year, in the last month or so, and some are enrolled for the 21-22 school year. So we were able to pull $215,000 out based on, again, actual enrollments. Some of we had two increases that we plugged in here. One was cyber liability insurance for $10,000, and I noted that I could have just said miscellaneous other for $10,000, but I wanted to note cyber liability insurance because there's some major happenings happening right now around cyber liability out in the market, not just in school districts across the country. We saw it with the major oil company, the pipelines that were just shut down based on a cybersecurity hack. So the insurance industry is being turned upside down around cyber liability insurance. And we're working Mr. Patel and I are working extremely closely with our insurance broker to renew that for next year. And just to give you a sense, current year we pay $8,500 for that insurance policy. Willis already saw some things happening in the market that was probably going to push that up by 50%. To like $12,000. A recent quote that we just actually got in from our current vendor pushes that to about $20,000, and it doesn't even provide all of the coverages that we have today. So we did put a little extra money in the budget expecting that's going to go up, but that's, again, we'll bring insurance policy renewals back to the June meeting, and we can certainly look at where that lands. And then the Chromebook lease, we are seeing tonight, you'll see a request for a purchase of our Chromebooks for our one-to-one devices, and Mr. Patel will talk about that a little bit more. But we are seeing some increased costs for our Chromebooks, so we did increase our budget to make sure we had that fully covered. So with all that said, where does that leave us? So as I noted, in every version of the budget we've had up until this point, we've had a 3% placeholder and that's actually what's in the numbers that I showed you tonight. The deficit, which began at around $3.9 million when we first talked about the budget back in, formally back in November, December, is now reduced to about $485,000 based on everything that I showed you tonight and over the last 2 months. Two other scenarios that I'm showing here are at, a reduction to 2.75 and a reduction to 2.5. And really what we are recommending is to the board is a 2.5%, reducing the tax increase to 2.5% based on where we're at right now. And you can see that what that does to the projected deficit. It does increase it from $485,000 to about $891,000. But I think it's important to note the following, that local revenues have been restored to normal trends. So there will not likely be significant deviations from budgeted amounts like we see this year. And as Dr. Levinowitz actually already noted, is expenditures, the budget process does not allow for spending beyond budget appropriation. So that's actually, we're not allowed to actually spend beyond what our budget sets out. So every year, I think we can set the expectation that we are going to come in under budget because that's what we're required to do. So yes, we do have a bit of a conservative expenditure budget, but I would say it is very accurate based on it's based on the needs of the district. So, you know, I think the expenditure budget, while it's conservative, it is very, very accurate, but there definitely is room there and we will come in under budget. So I'm very comfortable, you know, with a deficit of $891,000 to start the year. And that would make the median property tax increase, it would reduce it from $210 to $175. Again, this is just our typical expense and revenue trend chart. I won't say too much about this, but you can see I've set the chart up to show if revenue increases at 2.5% this year versus 3% this year, the orange line versus the gray line. You can see what that does. The future years still have a 2% placeholder. That has not changed. So again, while the revenues and expenses are growing away from each other, we do know that we have, while we aren't waiting for that to sort of solve the problem, we do have new revenue from new developments that are going to start to fill that in. But it certainly doesn't solve the whole problem there. So this is a chart that I shared at the budget town hall, which charts out Act 1 index compared to the actual property tax increases since 2014-15. And you can see that over the last 4 years, the school district has been below the Act 1 index. And if the recommendation of 2.5 is accepted, this would be, or anything below 3.3% would be the 5th year in a row that we've been below that Act 1 index that is set for us by the state. One question that I received from one of our board members, it was a really great question, so I added this slide, was a visual to show the changes in total assessed value of properties in Upper Dublin Township since 1617. And I think this is important just to say, you know, one of the reasons why we're able to sort of recommend that reduction from 3 to 2.5% is because in the 21-22 year, you can see that we're about a 2.3% increase in assessed value from new developments that are starting to turn on. Again, we're not letting that sort of solve our problem, but we're seeing that materialize now, and it's generating significant revenues for us. It's not putting us over the top, obviously, because we still have the gap, but you can see it definitely having an impact this year. So there's $33 million in new assessed value from new developments, which you can see from the chart in our other financial report in the treasurer's report. And $19 million of that increase is actually related to Prudential and the end of that appeal settlement that happened. So again, it's not new assessed value. It's just we no longer have a credit that we have due back to Prudential in the 21-22 year. That's over, and now we're just at the lower assessed value, which was approved in the settlement. Homestead Exclusion Act is the state property revenue that comes back to school districts that school districts are required to directly pass through to eligible homeowners to reduce their property taxes. So if you remember, actually, this is really another really good news point. If you remember last year around this time, the state was approving their final budget, and this became a major point of discussion. The state certifies the total statewide dollar amount and then ultimately the school district dollar amounts by May 1st, which they're required to do. And then if you remember in mid-May, the state said, oops, we sort of messed up that calculation. We need to reduce the certified amount and reduce basically the amount that every school district would get, ultimately reducing the amount that would be passed through to every homeowner to reduce their tax bills. So the state received significant pushback and they sort of filled that back in. But what we didn't know at the time that we later learned is that not only did they fill in that amount for last year, they also filled in their expected shortfall for 21-22, which sort of made everything whole, and ultimately kept our revenue line item very, very in line here. So you can see it's down a little over $20,000. There's also the number of approved homesteads has increased by about 6 homes. So as a result of a little bit less money, a couple more homes, the actual relief per homestead is down about $4, but it's still $348. That helps reduce property tax bills. So with all of that said, there's still open items, and even when we finalize the final budget in June, there will still be open items. There's just some things that cannot be fully 100% known as we move into the next year, and these are just a couple of those items. They're very similar to what we've reviewed in the past, so I won't walk through all of this, but we'll continue to do our best to monitor all this and note any material changes that may occur between now and June, which is highly unlikely. The one big item just to note is on the state budget. The state still, everything we're hearing is that the state will be approving a budget before June 30th, but we have no idea if it'll actually be approved before we approve our final budget on June 21st next month. So we'll continue to keep our eyes and ears open on that. And if there's any major updates, we'll certainly update anything before we present a proposed final next month. So that's what I have tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed final budget.
All right, thanks, Andy. So just a point of order so everyone remembers. So what we're talking about here is formally approving, well, next week, formally approving the proposed final budget, which goes and is published for public inspection. And then we would discuss and approve the actual final budget next month at the Finance Committee in June, and then at the legislative meeting in June. At the next Finance Committee meeting next month, I'll be going around the table and asking everyone to give their final recommendation on where we want to land with tax increase. Obviously, feel free to comment on that tonight if you wish, but tonight is really about approving the proposed final budget, which will continue, which at least right now continues to have a 3% tax increase placeholder. So any comments or questions from the committee or the board? That's kind of amazing. Oh, Darlene, go ahead.
Obviously, we do have the 3% placeholder. I certainly would like us to be, looking at the 2.5 that you're recommending at this point. And I certainly hope that and believe that you will continue to work on the budget to get it as low as possible. So I really do appreciate all the work that's gone into it, how you've kept us updated throughout the process. It's really appreciated. And, I think you're doing a great job with it. So thank you.
Art.
Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Yanni. And Dr. Yanni is very well aware of the bill that just passed unanimously in Harrisburg by the Senate, which does approve a bill that gives parents the option to let their children repeat a grade. And that is very concerning. Well, the implications can be significant for the district. And all I'm getting at is we really need to be more conservative than we have been in the past, probably, Andy, because we really have the projections of enrollment, especially I think for kindergarten, is much more, significantly more vague than it's ever been. If this bill passes in the state that it's in, it could have major implications for districts across the state. So, yeah, Dr. Yanni, you have any comments on that?
It's definitely something I'm worried about. We have been looking at enrollment, and we know that across the board, we're within class size guidelines, but just a few students in a grade level in a building could shift the number of staff that we would need particularly in our primary grades, K1 and 2. It's something we're watching on a daily basis.
Thank you.
To that point, Steve, if that were to materialize, would you expect that to materialize in the K1, 2 sort of grades, or is that likely to materialize across the board? Where would the impact of that bill be for us, would you expect?
I think it could be K5, probably K1, 2, 3 being the most heavy hit area, but it's something we're watching across all grade levels.
Yeah, and Steve, Dr. Yanni, I believe there's some statements regarding special ed students who've reached
So
18.
it would allow students, even if they're 21, to stay for an additional year, or students that were set to graduate to stay another year if they're under 21 and weren't necessarily going to stay for transition services. So that's something we're watching on a daily basis through all of our departments.
And just to clarify for everyone, as Art suggested, this bill was fast-tracked through the Senate. It seems likely that it will continue to be fast-tracked with a goal toward getting it passed by the end of this year so that parents are able to make decisions by the end of this year.
Yeah, Mark, I believe it includes in the bill currently that they would have to inform their school district by July 15th, I believe, is the date, which
And
is
that makes
past.
it extremely tricky. So when we do staffing at the end of the year,
Exactly.
we'll be telling staff through the end of the year that staffing assignments are preliminary because it could change over the summer.
Right. Titia.
Yeah, two questions. The number one is the new developments clearly help our revenue. I think the demographic study is hopefully going to give us some insight on potential costs down the road. Do you have any comments about that at the moment, Annie?
So yes, Mrs. Sherbeer, I'm going to be doing a brief presentation on Monday evening at the legislative meeting to go over the results of the demographic study. We are seeing relatively stable enrollment. However, in some of our buildings, we see a little bit of an uptick. So we're thinking not only about this budget, but the budget after it and the budget after it and the budget after that in terms of what we might need in staffing. Because, you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot as a leadership team, that just focusing on getting to June 30th of a year is only part of the work. We have to plan out what's going to be needed year after year so that nothing catches us by surprise as we move forward.
No, I appreciate that, because I think it is the long-term planning that is really going to be important.
Anyone else have comments or questions on the final?
Yeah, I have one
I'm
more
sorry,
question.
Titia.
The homestead inclusion was another question I had. Clearly last year and this year, or the coming year, it seems like politically that's okay. But what about years ahead beyond this year? Do you have any insight in where that might be going?
No, unfortunately. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I think, PASBO, I think, which is our state organization that supports school business officials and operations folks across the state, they sort of are taking the position that they expect this to sort of kind of fall right back into line and be steady state moving forward. But I mean, at this point, it's really too early to tell.
Okay, thanks.
And teach, it's based on gaming or gambling.
No, I know, but the gaming industry is
I
doing
think,
well at the moment, I see.
I believe it is. Unfortunately, it's just bizarre that we have to rely on a vice of gambling to help offset taxes.
I think, from my perspective too, the state budget always makes me very nervous living through, the last couple of years, really not knowing what you're ever going to get. When EIT reciprocity, we were in danger of losing that a couple of years ago. The homestead it's very tenuous, and with a gubernatorial election coming up, that could also change the landscape as well. So I'm always very, very, very worried about what the state budget holds for us.
For those who might be listening, just to contribute an opinion on the on that homestead reduction money. That is, it is a pass through the school district, but that is really not a school district function. And I would certainly encourage everybody to contact your legislatures and be concerned about that, because that really is money that's coming straight from the state. I shouldn't say it's coming straight from, it's coming from the state to the individual homestead owners as a rebate on your taxes. And while the path of the funds is through the school district has really nothing to say about it in any way. And to the extent that it does seem to be a political hot potato, letting your legislators know that you're concerned about it would help keep it alive. I do have one other comment. I want to mention the increase in assessed value that we're seeing this year for the whole township. We've seen an increase of, I think it was 2.2 or 2.3% overall, is a huge number for us. We have seen an average over the last several years of approximately 0.6% assessment growth. So this is a big number. A large chunk of that, about 0.9% of the 0.9 percentage points of the 2.3 comes from the end of the Prudential settlement. But the rest of it is legitimate assessment growth from new developments. And so I've been saying for several years to people who ask me about it that the assessment growth has, that matters, but it's been a really small number. It hasn't made a sizable difference. This is finally the year when those new developments that we've been talking about for years seem to be having a meaningful impact. I think they go a long way toward explaining or justifying a reduction in the recommended tax increase for this year, and hopefully I would expect for future years, because we still have a long way to go on the promenade, still have a long way to go on Enclave, and we have the whole thing still to go over in Fort Washington at Madison Estates. All right, you have your hand up.
Just to put this to rest, I just want to urge the community, those that are watching, to really take some time out and read Mr. Lecter's narrative. I think it's 27 pages, but there's a lot of charts and data in there, but it is really put together very, very well. It's a historical perspective of what we've done in Upper Dublin. And what strikes me significantly is when you look at the percent of revenue that comes from different sources, where even though the state revenue represents, I believe, around 18%, but most of that revenue is really the reimbursement for PSERS, which is over $8 million. It's $8.3 million the state is putting for PSERS, and the district is also putting an additional $8.3 million. We also put in that category the gaming money of $2.5 million. That's part of it also. So when you look at the state's contribution, if you look at what they're contributing to us in regards to what actually goes on in the classroom, the major sources of funds is the BEF, the basic education funding, and the special ed funding that has not really moved significantly over the past 4 or 5 years. And so we don't get additional revenues from the state that can really benefit our classrooms. And that's why another reason that we have to continue to increase property taxes.
Mr. Sirota, you're muted.
Thank you, Andy. So the committee needs to approve resolution to move forward a resolution to approve the proposed budget for next year. That's in the next item.
Yeah, so the next item, and again, one of the things I think what the board needs to move forward with is moving the proposed final budget either in its current form or the one thing I was hoping to get guidance on, again, not a final approval, obviously, till June, is do you want this proposed final to include 3%, or do you want us to update this and bring a final budget next month with the 2.5%
Okay.
built into it. So it's certainly not a final decision, but just some guidance on how you'd like us to prepare for the final budget.
All right, so for us, for the finance committee right now, I'm going to propose, members of the committee, that we move forward the final budget as written with 3% placeholder to the legislative meeting for next week. So we'll have a resolution next week to approve that proposed final budget. And then at the next finance committee, we will have the difficult discussion about exactly where we want to land for the final tax increase. In the meantime, I'll say, obviously pending changes between this month and next month, I'm very comfortable at the 2.5% number. But members of the committee, well, first, let me just make sure if anyone want to speak on that, or are we ready to move forward, to move that item forward? I see no hands. So members of the committee, are we prepared to move the proposed final budget forward to the legislative meeting as written?
Yes.
Yes.
Darlene, I just want to hear you on that one.
Yes, I said yes.
Okay, I didn't hear it. Okay, great. So there we go. Let's move forward to the budget resolution drafts for the final budget.
Yep, and I certainly don't intend to walk through all of these. I just wanted to make sure everyone had a look at what the drafts look like. Brooke, if you open those up, the first one is basically, they all include all of the normal information that we see every year. The big question that we'll need to finalize is the millage rate, which will again be determined based on the final budget. But the main topic I want to cover tonight is, Brooke, on the second page, which is the real estate tax resolution. There is another decision that we need to make, and I'll make a recommendation, and then certainly the board will ultimately decide on this. So if you remember last year, again, we were in the very beginnings of COVID, and there was a lot of talk across the state about school districts updating this resolution, which is typically just it rolls forward from year to year. And what the discussion primarily is we were expecting large negative economic impacts to lots of folks across the state from loss of jobs, loss of income, loss of revenue. So within this budget, the real estate tax resolution, it sets out the payment schedule of taxes. And there's basically 3 periods that taxes can get paid in the first 2 months after they're sent out. So let's just assume everyone has them by July 1st. So from July 1st, July till the end of August, there's a discount period where if you pay within that period, you get a 2% discount off your taxes. Then there's the face value period, which is from September till the end of October. And if you pay during that, you just pay whatever your face value is. And then if you pay after October 31st, there is a penalty period in which you pay a 10% penalty on whatever the taxes would be. And typically that's just standard. That's what's in every school district's resolution. 2% discount, face 10% penalty. Last year, we, along with many other school districts, took that penalty down to 0 until December 31st. And then at that point, the penalty was put on, and that was to hopefully give some relief to taxpayers that needed some more time to pay their tax bill. And again, the 10% penalty was added as of December 31st because we, as a school district, incur fees when it's turned over as delinquent taxes. We pay that fee to the county through our delinquent tax collector. So I guess the decision tonight is, do we want to continue with that 0 penalty period, or just revert back like many school districts are doing this year to the regular penalty period? And I will tell you that my recommendation is to move back to the regular penalty period. We did run into some scenarios where many taxpayers, for whatever reason they chose, it was certainly within their right, waited till the very last minute to pay their bills. And there were numerous issues that happened as a result of that. Within the last 2 weeks, our tax collector can no longer take checks. So they have to get either cash or certified, money orders, things like that. And there were lots of folks that just kind of fell into a delinquent bucket or ran into a lot of challenges to get that paid at the very end. And I just think that I don't think there's a need for it going forward, but I'm certainly open to whatever the board decides to do here. My recommendation is just to go back to the standard language, which is the second green paragraph there. That's always existed before the change last year.
Comments or questions from the committee or the rest of the board? Art.
I think, Mr. Selectman, the important statement that you made is the sense that you're getting from neighboring districts and perhaps also from PASBO that many of them are going back to the original schedule. And if that's the case, then I think we should definitely go back. But I strongly recommend that we do as much as we can to inform the community that it's going back to the original schedule. That can catch them. They can just think about what was done last year and assume that that's the same schedule, even though it's in the tax bill that we get, that we should work with our tax collector to make sure that it's very clear to the community that we are reverting back to the original timeline schedule.
Darlene.
Again, my thinking is that we made that change based on, the circumstance. Fortunately, we're moving in a real positive direction to get things back on track. And I think we should go back to the original language, which will, probably then follow us for years to come. So I think there's a greater danger in using the old the language we had this year for 2 years and then to go back. I think that could create even more confusion. I think that because we were in the pandemic, people understood what was happening. And I think at this point, we should go back to the original.
I think, Mark, I think there was also legislation. Dr. Tiani, was there actually legislation after the fact that required us to extend that, or?
I don't know if there was actual legislation. It was talked about at the from PASBO. Andy, do you want to?
Yeah, there wasn't. There was some discussion at the state level on if school districts could even eliminate the penalty period, right? I think initially the discussion was let's just eliminate the penalty period, and I think with guidance from our solicitor and most school districts took this, they didn't eliminate it. They just reduced the percentage to 0. So I think the state took some action to say, yeah, you're allowed to eliminate it just to not create any issues there.
That's right. As I recall, there were districts that went the other way that we didn't feel we had the authority to do. And I think what happened was a little bit of cleanup so that those districts that did that and didn't actually have the authority to do it were no longer in violation. Because clearly what they were trying to do was the same thing we were trying to do, was just a different version of the language to accomplish it. Titia.
Yeah, so I think the idea of going back to where it was is a good one. Is it possible to follow up on what Art was saying to alert especially the people who used this modified arrangement this past year, that they are specifically informed of the new or of the rollback, so that there are no surprises?
I don't think there's any way for us to do that. Who used it because we changed it versus who typically pays in that period, and identifying all those individual taxpayers that paid during that period. I mean, that would be a massive undertaking. I think that would be very difficult to accomplish.
I think what we can and should do along those lines is to put an insert in with the tax bill. The tax bill, of course, has the dates right on it, but the tax bill is, not designed to be easily read, shall we say. So I think a simple flyer that goes in there and is much more clear about exactly when the deadlines are and that they were resuming the previous long-standing practice would be wise.
All right, sounds good.
So Andy, or can we ensure that gets in with the tax bills?
We can certainly look into that. I think that's reasonable. I will just let you know that it will likely increase the mailing cost for the bills because the next agenda item, which we'll talk about, we do also send the property tax rebate program out with
Right.
the notification out with that. And I think we were going to send 2 pages last year on that. And Mike Klein, our tax collector, pulled us back from that and said, hey, if you put 2 pages in there, it's going to take us over. So it might be some incremental mailing costs as a result. But if the board feels strongly about that, we can certainly put an extra page in there.
All right, well, if you can report back on that to confirm for us next week. But my inclination is it's important to do and we should do it even if that does incur some additional mailing costs this year.
Yeah, I might not know that by next week, but again, we don't need to finalize this until June. I will certainly talk to
Okay.
Mike and have something at June's meeting.
All right.
By the latest.
Okay. Darlene, I saw your hand, but it's not there. Did you have something else?
Well, I was just going to say about having the conversation with Mike Klein, because there was a good letter in about what was happening last year. So basically we'd be replacing that so that, maybe the cost won't go up. Just, a clearer, more, defined letter that we are returning to the old way. So, but I was just going to say, talk to Mike. I'm sure he'll work with us.
I'm sure he will. All right, so I think I heard members of the committee we would recommend, or we would like to go back. We're going to recommend to the full board that we resume the previous schedule. Is that correct?
Yes.
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 All right. Okay, let's move forward to the property tax rebate program discussion.
Yeah, so another good conversation. In May of last year, the board approved a new property tax rebate program, which modeled a similar program that was implemented by the North Penn School District. North Penn was actually was the first to implement this program. So I do think it was a great thing that was put into place. And we did, while we had some folks take advantage this year, the actual results were a little bit low. So, back to your point, Dr. Davis, my recommendation on this program, when we talk through it quickly, would be to still continue to include an insert so every taxpayer who may be eligible for this is aware of the program. But if you remember, the basis for this program is a property tax rebate program that the state of Pennsylvania has in place. A property owner or a renter is eligible for the district rebate program if they are first approved by the state program. So again, they can't actually submit for the school district rebate until they receive the state rebate. And that acts as sort of the gateway. So we're not deciding whose income meets the limits, right? All that work is then done by the state. They take the information and the approvals they get from the state, and then they fill out our simple form, which is included in the documents with this agenda item, and submit it to the school district. We review it, we review the documentation presented, and then if approved, we send it back to them. The state rebates with the supplement, can range from $375 to $975. And then currently our program provides a 40% rebate of the total state amount that a taxpayer receives. So our program provides an additional $150 to $390 based on the level of rebate a household receives from the state. The resolution that for this program was approved for 1 year. So again, as we discussed last year, this would be an annual resolution that we would talk about and approve, similar to the budget resolutions, and included with the agenda is all the attachments there. And Brooke, if you can actually open that up, and page 1 is really what I want to focus on tonight, just to make sure. So page 1 here is sort of the pro forma of the program, just to give you an idea of the costs and the participation that we saw this year. So if you look in sort of the top grid, and I do know it's a little smaller, just leave it at the top there, Brooke. Yep. So we had about 10%, a little less than 10% of eligible households, and eligibility is strictly based on reporting that we get from the state that says, here's all the people that they believe are eligible based on applications. About 9% submitted rebates to the school district. And at the 40% rebate rate, we provided about $6,640 of rebates to eligible households. You can see that at 100% participation, it would cost about $75,000. Again, that's highly unlikely. North Penn did see a little bit of increase from year 1 to year 2, but not substantial. So that's one of the big decisions I think that we need to make is, are we renewing this program, and at what rate are we renewing it? So just to kind of give a little sense, if the board was interested in increasing that to 50% as an example, at the same participation rate, you can see it would be a little over $8,300 would be the total rebates. And if you had 100% participation rate, it would be about a little over $90,000. So 2 questions. Are we continuing with this program next year? If so, I'd like to approve it this month so we can have everything ready to go next month. And at what rate is the board interested in providing our rebates at for next year?
All right, and so for the committee and the rest of the board, just a reminder, this one is really purely board action. The administration doesn't necessarily have a recommendation for us on this one. I'll go ahead and go first. I would say absolutely yes, we should renew this, and I would like to renew it at a 50% rate. That is the same rate that North Penn had for their year 2. And I'm hopeful that by increasing the rebate percentage a little bit and another year of advertising, that maybe we can get that participation rate up a little bit higher. Darlene.
Basically, I was going to say the same thing. I definitely believe we should continue with the program, and I would like to see us move it to 50% for this year with the hopes of increasing it in years to come.
Mike.
Yeah, I'm in the same frame of mind. I concur that we should increase it to 50% and continue to get the word out so more eligible households can take advantage.
Jen.
Yes. I know I'm not on this committee, but I love this program, and I'm so happy to see that we're considering moving it up to 50%. And just thank you for the detailed explanation, Andy.
Jeff.
I just wanted to chime in and say agreed as to both.
Itya.
Yes, thanks for bringing this forward, and I would agree with the 50%.
All right, I want to just add on an additional comment that what we're saying here is that we appreciate, I think, okay, let me speak for myself. What I'm saying here, and I think the board is saying as a whole, is that we certainly appreciate the state's property tax rebate program for those who qualify, for renters and homeowners who qualify, but we feel that the amount that they're redeeming is not nearly enough, and so we're supplementing it. That's how I feel, and I would advocate that we all advocate with our legislators to increase the amount that they rebate and also increase the qualifications, because the qualifications are really extremely narrow. And I would say if they do increase the qualifications at some point, we'll need to reassess for us, because that could dramatically affect the cost for us. But I would hope that they would. I would rather this program come from the state at a fully funded, properly defined way. But in the meantime, I think we're doing what we can to supplement what's a good idea, just not implemented fully enough. So members of the committee, we will move this one forward at 50% to the legislative agenda.
Yes.
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 All right. We have some property tax settlement stipulations.
Yep, and we cover these every single month. So these are just two residential settlement stipulations, all the same information as we've seen in prior months. They're relatively small overall. So the next two items, I'd just like to answer any questions if board members have any questions about them.
Comments or questions? Art?
Yeah, they are relatively small, Andy, but we're starting to see residential properties. I think there's a slight uptick on appeals from residential properties. And once one person on that block on Gift Drive does it, you know, we have to be aware of that. The neighbor might do it. So this again brings in what we spoke about earlier tonight, Andy, is the, increasing the funds that we're putting away in the assessment appeals pot of money, because, if one person does it, it could lead to more. And I think it also reminds us that there's not been an assessment done in Montgomery County for I don't know how many
1998.
years.
Yeah,
Huh?
1998.
Since 1998. So we're going to see more and more of these.
Anyone else? Comments or questions? Okay, so members of the committee will move this one forward to both of these, J and K, forward to the legislative agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Moving up to the Chromebook lease, Prakash.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. So this past December, our team started to work on identifying Chromebook that would be part of the 3-year cycle of bulk lease. We work with our vendor, Amplified IT, who provides us with our Google license management to get specs on what would meet our requirements for utilizing the Chromebook. We also spoke to our teachers to identify what their needs are so that the devices would come equipped with features that they can utilize in their setting. So teachers' ask was for a stylus that would work when the math classes, the science classes would have touchscreen feature, foldable, things of that sort. So once we were able to identify the specs and also meet recommendations from an Amplified IT, we brought in various models from various manufacturers, HP, Acer, Dell, and we gave our teachers and our students some time to play with the device and provide us with feedback as far as, is it going to meet their needs? Does it allow them to run Google Meet at the same time, work on Google Docs and so forth? And in the end, we landed on the Acer 512 model. That was the most robust system that would allow us to continue orchestrating our instructions in the manner that we have, but also allow us with some buffer room over the next couple of years as Chrome pushes out new updates, that these models will be able to support those upgrades as well. And so we are looking at leasing 2,000 Acer 512. Once these are in circulation, we're also going to be pulling back roughly 1,500 old Chromebooks that are no longer going to be supported by Google. And as a result, their OS may not support our needs, and it'll also create vulnerabilities as well. And so we'll be pulling back those Chromebooks that are no longer going to be supported by Google. All right. Questions?
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee or the board? Let's start with Art.
Yeah, hey Prakash, I know months ago districts were unable to get Chromebooks because so many districts were ordering Chromebooks. I noticed on the quote, 5 to 30 days. So is that, do you feel confident that we'll get these in timely?
Yeah, so as I was working with this vendor, one of my asks was providing us with a solid timeline of when we could acquire these. So they actually have the 2,000 Chromebooks sort of on hold for us, if you would. And so once we finalize on our end, they are anticipating that we would have these devices in our hands sometime second or third week of June.
Anyone else? So Prakash, just to clarify for everyone, the Chromebook model that you're looking at is, well, not the same. It is fundamentally similar to the last batch in that it is a flip touch stylus
Yes.
same size screen, just up.
It's a slightly different screen. So instead of being a widescreen, it's more rectangular.
Okay.
But when you do flip it over, it does display a widescreen format.
Okay. And I see we do have the $1 buyout in the lease. Is the expectation to pass that along to the students and their families, or is that for us?
That is for us. So our thought is that at the end of the lease, if we do need to utilize additional Chromebooks for one reason or another, we don't fall short. We also have the option to then sell those back to third-party vendors as well. So it just gives us a lot more options at the end of the lease as far as how we want to utilize this particular batch of Chromebooks.
Okay. Art, is your hand up again or still?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Cost to families? Is there a cost to families for this?
There isn't.
Excellent. We've come a long way.
Yeah, we stopped that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so that's all good news. So members of the committee will move that one forward to the legislative agenda.
Yes.
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 All right, and yes from me. So thank you, Prakash. The next one, is that yours as well, the E-rate
That is
application
mine as
agreement?
well, sir. So the IU helps many of the surrounding school districts with acquiring E-rate for various types of services, such as internet access, telecommunication, network services, equipment, and so forth. So we would like to utilize the IU again in the service to help us process the paperwork that is necessary to acquire E-rate.
Comments or questions? For everyone's knowledge, we have used the MCIU for this for as long as I can remember. E-rate is actually a program from the federal government, but it does require some administration. And so that's what we're actually getting from the MCIU. So members of the committee will move that one forward.
Yes.
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 All right, thank you. And one more, Prakash.
Yes, trifecta for me tonight, it looks like. So VMware allows our tech department to utilize multiple applications and operating systems workloads on a server machine. The nice thing with this is instead of having individual stations, we just have a couple of servers that would spawn up a Windows system with an application that is utilized by our staff. The one area that you might be familiar with is the signage, the high school signage, where you see the display of messages. That's ran through our VMware, where we can go in and program it to display messages. Some of the other systems that the VMware supports that some of you might be familiar with is PaperCut, QuickBooks. These are all applications that are run on the VMware. Integra One provides us with any necessary upgrades to the applications that support the VMware, along with technical support, and also keep us secure with the applications that are running on the VMware. So
All right, any comments or questions? All right, I don't see any just for comparison. So this is an annual item for us. Is this price similar to what we've paid in the last couple of years?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we'll move that one forward, members.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay. Thank you very much. And we are up to community input. So members of the community who are attending the meeting, if you would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand and I will call on you in turn. A reminder that the meeting is being recorded. The rules for community input process are in the agenda. And so in turn, I will allow you to speak and you will have to unmute yourself.
Oh, you're muted,
Brooke.
Mr.
Yeah,
Sweater.
Brooke, you'll have to do this one for me because I'm not a host.
Oh,
Or make
sorry.
either way, or make me a host.
You should be. I will look into that. Go ahead, Ms. Totella. Hi, Jenny Vitella Ambler. I want to talk about the West project. I absolutely love the project. I loved it when Jarrett proposed it. I love the idea. I am very grateful that for Washington PTA and therefore the parents of the For Washington students for many years are so gracious and giving, and we have this kind of money to spend on great projects like this. Sandy runs in a similar position to do something, and Jarrett obviously was as well. And I know Thomas Fitz for the air conditioning, and it goes on. So it's amazing. The parents in this of these students of these schools are just amazing to have all this money. My problem with the project is the location. That field isn't overgrown. That field is run over by water runoff off the parking lot. I'm pretty intimately aware of what goes on at that field because I've spent countless hours painting, gardening, taking care of things around that building, specifically that location. That field is our one and only actual field on the Fort Washington grounds. And it is actually in the long-term project that the group came up with whatever months ago. It has been problematic for a while, but it's because water. I have pictures of water coming off the parking lot. They come through pipes and they come into the grass, and it follows a stream down towards the stream in the back of the other blacktop playground. And I am very concerned about not fixing that field, but rather just going over it with this classroom, and B, you know, I think the long range plan and the ideal thing would be to fix up the drainage so that that ball field could be used, so that we're not kicked off other fields because of high school sports or whatever. And also, if we moved it closer, so there's space. I have a picture of it. It's actually in that long range plan. If we move it closer so it's not right where the back cage is, but it's moved closer to the hill, it will actually put it closer to the steps and the walkway, which would make it better for ADA compliance, I would imagine. You wouldn't have to travel as far over muddy grass, because it gets very muddy from the blacktop area and the stairwell across that whole field until you get up to the Lockash Fields at the high school. And I know it because I ran Big Strides there for years and years and years. And I've also painted that gray wall, not me, myself. It was a 5th grade project. And it was all muddy all along that wall. And that's the problem. And so that location right on that ball field is not good, in my opinion, for 2 reasons. We lose that field altogether when it should be fixed so that West actually has a nice kickball field for sports, for recess and for gym, and also the ADA compliance and just the overall drainage issue for that area. Bob, I don't know if you need pictures, but I have pictures of the water literally streaming through that whole ball field. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like I'm a host now, so I'll take over, Brooke. Thank you. Next up, go ahead, and Mr. Kessler.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, so I'll start with the easy one. The lease with the Chromebooks, I think you indicated there's no provision for sales to families. And I'm wondering if our current lease provides for that. And if not, is there a consideration of that? Because it would allow people who can't afford to buy a computer to have the kids have a laptop over the summer, and they could augment their learning and perhaps reduce the sort of slide back that we see in the beginning of each school year. The second question I have relates to the property tax payment and the timing of that. You indicated there's a 2% discount when it's paid in 2 months from the bill, and then it's 0% discount if it's paid by October. And then last year we let people go with a 0% up until the end of December or sometime in December. My question was, and I may have missed this, so I apologize, but I don't know how many people utilized that extension. And I understood that you said there's some indication of a penalty if in terms of our timing of payment, but if we allowed people a little more flexibility with that, is there a financial penalty to the district if we maintained it to December? Given that there are some households where I would imagine the additional time is beneficial, and while yes, the pandemic is coming to a close, thankfully, I would imagine that there are still households out there that are still struggling, and that perhaps even with this year, the additional time might be beneficial. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Brister.
Hi, I'm Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I missed like 10 minutes of this meeting because I had a really bad connection. Just putting that out there because I have no idea if it's, I never know if it's my problem at my house or if it's at your end. But I think I got all the essentials. So I just wanted to say, of course, I'm really happy to see that one of the alternatives for the tax increase is 2%. There was a lot of positive news as far as revenue and changes from previous budget presentations, positive changes, meaning, Mark, you discussed, that the value, it's finally, we've been promised this assessed value. Not that I'm happy with all the developments, but we're finally seeing it. So I'm happy that you're going to consider 2.5% instead of 3%. I'm not really sure why you're not giving the direction to Mr. Leckman and Dr. Yanni to go ahead with that and then put a 2.5% tax increase budget out to the public for this next month. But I guess you're going to wait. It sounds like you're going to wait till June, which I don't really understand. And just another thought that comes to my mind, I'd be even more happy with a 2% tax increase, which would mean you need, I think, according to what's in your budget documents, you need about 375,000 of more savings. And there's a lot of places you could get that, but I get that 5 million in the capital reserve is a nice round number. And I totally understand that there are projects that are going to have to be done on your elementary buildings, but you don't have to do 5 million in your capital reserve. You could do 4.5 million instead of the 5 million. My point is, there are places to find the 375,000. None of the board is discussing that. And yet there was a lot of positive news here. So anyway, 2.5% tax increase is certainly better than 3. 2% would be even better. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And would anyone else like to speak? I see no more hands. Give that a moment. Okay, I see no more hands, so I will close community input. And we will turn that over first to Dr. Yanni and Mr. Leckman.
I'm going to let Mr. Patel answer the question about the lease, the current lease, and the buyout. And then if Mr. Leckman can tackle the question that was asked about, is there any financial impact or penalty for folks that are not paying their taxes on time to the district?
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. The current lease that we do have in play does not have the option for parent buyback for the Chromebooks. And the new lease is structured in the same exact manner, so parents are not charged a tech fee. So these are not lease to own structure. These are leased by the school district, and they're owned by the school district at the end of the lease. As far as the students having computers over the summer, we're going to follow the same protocol as we've done in the past, where our kindergarten to 4th grade students will be returning their Chromebooks. Grades 5 through 12, they'll be holding on to their Chromebooks. The reason we're asking for the K through 4 is so that we can make sure that those computers we'll have an operating system that is going to be a current operating system. And if they are no longer supported, then we would like to pull those out of circulation and substitute those with a newer device.
Yeah, I'll answer the property tax question. I heard maybe two separate questions in there, right? So I think from a cash flow perspective, most of the money, even last year, most of the property tax payments did come in during the discount period. So I would expect no matter which way the decision is made, that would continue and the majority of money would come in during that discount period. We did, and we talked about this at a finance committee meeting a number of months ago, we did see a large increase in payments in November and December last year during the 0% penalty period as compared to prior years. And that is actually, there's a report in the other financial reports document under one of the agenda items. I'm not sure which one it is off the top of my head. It's called Other Financial Reports, and you'll find it in there. It's the treasurer's, the tax collector's report, which shows you the actual collections by month compared to the prior year. So there definitely were many properties that took advantage of the 0% penalty period. Short of analyzing the 6,000 property payments that we get per year, I can't tell you if that was individual homeowners that took advantage of that or if that was commercial properties that were managing cash flow and just decided it was in their best interest to hold on to that until the end of December to make their payment. So that, and then there is no impact to the school district based on how, other than cash flow coming in. What I mentioned was we have a penalty even last year as of December 31st. Because the school district does in fact realize a 5% penalty for all taxes that are turned over as delinquent to our delinquent tax collector through the county. So there is a negative impact at that point only.
I'd just add to that, reinforcing something you mentioned earlier, Andy, is that by having a little more spread, having this spread between 0% and the delinquent period, allows people another window to avoid getting into the delinquent period. So that's good for us, it's good for them, it's good for everybody, rather than jumping all the way from 0% straight to the delinquent period. So I'm comfortable with that particular thing. Prakash, I would just ask as a follow-up, if we wanted to utilize that $1 buyout for in the new Chromebook lease to offer the Chromebooks at the end of the lease to families, is that a thing we would be allowed to do?
I am not sure how that would work. I don't know if there are any kind of regulations that would prevent us from selling it to the parents. We would have to look into it as far as if we are allowed or not.
We can look into that and then circle back with the board on Monday night.
Okay, thank you. There was a comment about the location of the proposed outdoor classroom at Fort Washington. So we are looking at that coming back to us again anyway. So Bob, maybe by then you can have a fuller report on what the alternatives might or might not be. And yeah, there was a lot of positive news in the budget. As I said, we have a lot of things, that's all great news, and we have a lot of competing priorities, including, as the commenter mentioned, keeping the tax increases to a minimum. So I think we are aware of that, and so we will have a more detailed discussion about those priorities in June. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee or the board? Art.
I just want to remind the community that a lot of the good news, as Mr. Leckman indicated, is one time good news. And that's why Mr. Leckman is recommending that we move the $5 million. If we reduce the taxes more, if you look at our budget for next year, everything continues to go up. We have an opportunity to take a lot of these one-time savings and put into capital projects, and I strongly recommend that we do as much as we can at this year.
Anything else from committee, board, administration?
I would just like to thank Mr. Leckman and the finance team here in the district for all of the work, particularly around the narrative, and the board for all of the questions and getting into the details of the budget tonight. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I'll reinforce that. Thank you again. And that narrative is full of detail, and I certainly encourage everyone to read that. All right, with that, I will just announce our next Finance Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, June 17th at 6 p.m. It will be remote. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.